So, I'm making my own role playing game. Let's talk about it. So, I've been working on a role playing game system of my own for the last 2 years. I call it Backpack RPG for the moment. And right now we are in our third playtest campaign. The rules has gone through several iterations. And I'm right now working on a more professional looking playtest kit. So to start to involve players outside my own group. But I want to talk today about the reasons, really. Why would anyone go through the pain of designing their own system? So, a way to explain it is that I've been thinking a lot about the promise of D&D, the promise of Dungeons and Dragons. For me, this means I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since first edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then I've played every edition up and into 5e. I haven't looked at the new 2024 rules or the player's handbook that was released this August, I think, in Gen Con. But it's tweaks on the 5e system. But basically, more and more over the years, I found that something was missing, something had been lost, and also being kind of a forever GM, I was also getting fatigued by the prospect of running a campaign, the prospect of tracking everything, and still, and this clashed a little bit with my ambition of making interesting encounters. So, for me, the promise of D&D is a little bit about this. So I wanted to kind of do the impossible, maybe fetch a little bit of the nostalgia, the D&D you remember from way back. And I wanted to get back the sense of discovery that I think had been lost with at least since third edition and on. And the same sense of danger was also lost. I thought that the D&D we played now was never felt dangerous. There was like an assumption of game balance that was not in the earlier versions. So I wanted a little bit get back to that. And the second reason for developing a new rule set was to also fulfill another promise of D&D. It's the grandiose battles, the epic spell duels, the cinematic combat moments where you, with the player characters, use the environment and do cool stuff. The thing you remember, the things you see in movies. Usually, a combat in D&D, at least since the 2000s and onwards, were very, very slow. The rules kind of almost required you to use a grid and very detailed movement, trigger special abilities, and it was focused a lot. It felt it had become too much of a board game or even a computer game, especially with 4th edition. And as a GM, I it made me change the way I developed encounters and situations. Spellcasters, for instance, had become very, very rare. Meeting an enemy spellcaster was always a nightmare to keep track of. It was enough just to keep track on the effects of the player's spells, so that meant that I found that combats became more like boring, and we had stuff like attacks of opportunity that made combat static, and we had a more and more complex rule system that I found that I kind of lost some players over time. Not lose, they played, but they never really they found the effort of grokking the rules too much, so they relied on other their buddies sitting next to them to help them. Okay, what do I do now, and what should I roll? And so it created something that I found a little. It was kind of a non-engagement in a way, and that's not on the player. It's actually, I think, on the rules. So I wanted to get back to that, being able as a GM to do big stuff with complex stuff without the minutia, without the tracking, without the preparation needed, and so this was really the seed that was planted many years ago, but eventually it burst through into the concepts that is now Backpack RPG. So I had a few detailed design goals when we set up. For the Game Master, the most important thing was I wanted to challenge myself to create a system that had no tracking for the GM whatsoever regarding battles. That means no tracking of monster stats, no tracking of their hit points, no tracking of their spells, or what condition they was under for the moment. If they were immobilized, if they were restrained, prone, poisoned, burning, all of that. The reason for this was I wanted the GM to be able to say, okay, you step into the courtyard and you can see there's 24 of armed soldiers, and on the balcony above them you see 5 of the Baron's spellcasters ready to stop whatever you do. Okay, so we're talking about battle with 5 spellcasters and like 20-25 soldiers. So and this you can do with Backpack basically with no prep whatsoever. Just you can come up with it at the moment and the battle is on. And the second thing, just to clarify, is that it doesn't mean that the GM has no tracking at all, but they should track the things that are important, the big stuff. They should track time in the world, because time is a resource. They should track factions, what's happening, and they should have brain bandwidth enough so that they could put more time into story development or improvising and stuff like that bring the world to life. And for the player, I'm okay with the player tracking stuff. If they're tracking their own stuff, they have less work to do always in any role-playing game. And but in Backpack, I was okay that they would of course track their health, and they would also need to track their gear, their equipment, their items. And I also wanted to create a game where the GM do not necessarily have to work very hard to motivate the players to do stuff, because it could sometimes feel a bit forced that you have to come up why they would do certain stuff. So I thought I'd simplify it. So a backpack is created with the idea that the whole system will incentivize the players to seek treasure, to seek gold in any shape or form. And they can then use this to try to achieve any personal goal they want within the game. Say they want to be more powerful, or they want to learn something particular, or they want to create something, artifacts, or build a castle, whatever they want. I wanted the currency to be treasure. So and that I have found creates a wonderful motivation that's very, very instinctual almost. You don't have to. The game system motivates the players to seek out and do stuff automatically. So this was the design goals. And regarding the style of the system, this is where you could go in a several different direction. I have found in the later years that the OSR style of play have caught my interest a lot, and so Backpack I have leaned heavily into the exploration part, the survival, that it's dangerous, and it that system should also help running a sandbox. So everything you need to run a sandbox and everything around that should be within the system. I also wanted the rules to be light. I wanted players to be able to quickly understand what is what and quickly learn the mechanics. The mechanics should not get in the way. So these were the style. You could use the same philosophy and the design goals and create a more trad system, like more storytelling focused or narrative campaign arcs or adventure paths. You could absolutely do that. And you could do that with the current backpack system as well. You would just not need everything in the backpack system to do that. But everything you need would be the backpack system. And in the process of the last 2 years, there is a couple of systems that have been designed, and some of them are quite radical. The idea that nothing is holy and everything can be questioned has been very strong. So there is, of course, the combat system. This was kind of the embryo of it all. All these systems I will cover in detail in this design journal series of videos. There's a combat system that is require no tracking at all, require no miniatures, no grids. Although, as I will show, there are some other concepts that could be useful if you like to be more visual on the table. There is a system about equipment and encumbrance, and since this is a exploration and expedition focused game, encumbrance and supply and durability of your equipment had to be modeled somehow, and this is done very, very, very elegantly and almost buried in the system when you do other stuff. Weather, I wanted to be like a character in my games, so that the weather really matters. Clothing matters, and when you camp equipment matters. What you do around the campfire matters. So there is a system about that that actually makes time meaningful. That what you choose to do, even in a situation where you have made camp, actually is important. Everything is important. Crafting, of course, if it's such an easy thing as maybe just repairing equipment or maybe making potions, and even crafting when creating magical items, and that is rules-wise very, very light, very, very easy. There is a system that I call knowledge, because there is, of course, some kind of progression that the pieces get stronger and stronger over time. But there is also some kind of development of the character that is not tied to their actual progression in levels or ranks. But knowledge is something that you gain from what you actually do. It is tied more to the choices and the playing, the role playing in the world. So knowledge is stuff you gain maybe by studying something in the library. You can gain knowledge, and that is written on your character sheet, and then you have it. Typical knowledge is, of course, languages that you know, but it could also be like more specific stuff, like knowledge of the fairy nobility, knowledge of spells, knowledge of certain holy persons or saints, knowledge of a special kind of dwarven weapon smithing, stuff like that. Knowledge is something that you can gain from talking to persons and studying. There is also a system for sharing knowledge over time within the player party. Magic system, of course. This magic system is quite different. I haven't seen anything like it. This is actually where all spells are built in the moment from two components. One component is called signs, and the other is essence. So signs is basically how you bring forth the spell, and the essence is what effect it has. And from that, and you can combine signs and essences in many different combinations, creating different magical effects. But it's not a free form magic system. It's quite structured. But I wanted to make mages feel like they're actually kind of discovering things, experimenting, and kind of creating their own style of magic that is not always the same. And there's also a system where religion actually have an impact in the world and is important. Even if you're not a cleric or something like that, religion is still important, and it has game effects that you can benefit from. And all these systems, I'm thinking of making a video for each one, or maybe 2 or 3 at a time to go deeper into it. So this is just a quick, brief overview of the Backpack role-playing game system that I am working on, and I hope that I can share more of this with you in the coming months. Thanks a lot for looking at my video. Bye bye.